Hello to everybody hopping on our webinar. We're going to get started in just a second. Sorry we were late. We had a little hiccup with the technology and Zoom, go figure. Super surprise. But we're here and we are going to get started in just a second. I'm going to let everybody get logged in here and we will get started in just a sec. Okay, I'm going to let everybody get settled in here, but we can get started. Thank you everybody for coming to our webinar this morning. We are going to talk about some mental health resources and first responders during the holidays and kind of things that get faced this time of year. We've got with us Jordan Long, who is with Revital, Colorado. He is Revital, Colorado with a group of his best people. And he's going to kick us off here and talk in just a minute. And also with us is Todd Lambert and Julius Holinek. Both are PSTrax account executives and retired fire. So we've got a great panel on today. And so we're going to go ahead and get started because there's a lot to cover. We are recording this, so we will send out a recording to anybody who's interested in replaying what's said or showing it to anybody. We just want to get as much information out there as we can about this topic. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Jordan and Todd and Julius, and we'll just get her kicked off. So over to you guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Liz, for the introduction, and thanks to everybody who's jumped on and joined us here. Super humbled and honored just to have the opportunity again. I think this is the second time we've done this. I know, Todd, you were on here last year. Julius, it's awesome to have you on here. I'm excited to hear a little bit more about your story, but I love that you guys do this. I think it's extremely important just to share with the community, whoever jumps on, the responders, spouses, whoever it is, just the importance of not only supporting our responders with the resource that we have, but as family and as friends. And we need it all the time, but specifically during the holiday season, because it does get a little bit more difficult. And we'll kind of, share some things as to why that is. But I think we also want to keep this as positive as possible and encouraging people that you can get through these holiday seasons, and here's how, and some of the tips and trips or things that maybe we didn't do well that we can encourage others to do better. But just briefly, like she said, my name is Jordan Long. I was a former firefighter paramedic in Denver, Colorado with Adams County Fire Rescue, kind of in the North Denver side of town. I did that from 2010 to 2019. And long story short, just due to some of the own challenges that I went through and experienced personally, as most of us know, in the fire service, we've got other jobs on the side of firefighting. For me, it was running another business. I had poor work-life balance. I didn't know how the career was affecting me and impacting me. I didn't understand what I was bringing home to my family. I thought that, by not talking about it and not sharing some of the things that I went through, I was protecting my family. The reality of it was I was shutting them out to an emotional side of me that they needed. And young kids at the time, a wife who was spending 48 to 72 hours raising our kids without me. And I didn't quite acknowledge the impact that it was having in my life and on my family. And so like 2016, 2017, I started to get into some pretty unhealthy coping patterns, working way more hours than I needed to be because that's where things were comfortable. I didn't have to sit with my thoughts when I wasn't working, utilizing alcohol more in an unhealthy manner to try to sleep and to try to cope. And long story short, that's just put a wedge between my wife and I, and came to a point where things hit the fan in 2018. And we had to come to a place of making a decision and had to choose one career or the other. Fortunately, I knew what I needed to do to keep my family intact. And that was the hardest decision of my life, was leaving the fire service. But it led to, after the fact, studying the resources that are truly out there for the responder community and finding that most of them are responsive care, which is completely necessary. And we need all of that. But on our end, we wanted to start something that was a little bit more proactive and preventative in the approach to mental health services for responders. And so we started this organization called Revital Colorado out here in Colorado in 2020, right before COVID. And this has kind of led to this partnership with PSTrax, because I think about a year into us running this organization, I met Scott Bergeron and some of the others from the team, and it was just, we just hit it off. I think there was a common passion for what we were doing. I love the mission of what they do, because they truly make our jobs easier in the sense of the software that they provide for these responders. But they started supporting us in a financial way, and obviously in a way like this, where they, help us create platforms to share our mission and our vision and share hope of what we can do for the responder community. So I'll jump into what we do more later in the webinar, and make sure that everybody knows how they can contact us and reach out. But that's a little bit about my story. I know personally during the holiday season, things were tough, because I think my first 4 or 5 years, especially when you're low on the totem pole, you're working on the holidays. It may be Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. It may be Thanksgiving. It may be all of them. And there's lots of emotions that come with that. You're missing memories. You're missing out on time, whether it's a party or something that your family tradition. It's not just the time, it's the memories specifically. And so you harbor a little bit of guilt that you're not there with your family. And then obviously what we see and deal with on the streets becomes more difficult, because the holidays it's not always happy and bliss for everybody out there. And so I'd love to hear from Todd and Julius just a little bit about their stories and kind of their experiences around the holidays, because these two individuals spent a long time in the fire service. So I'll turn it over to you guys to share a little bit more.
All right, well, I'll kick it off from there. Hi, everybody. My name's Todd Lambert. 30 years in the fire service, retired, several different things. I was with the Air Force, so was a civil service firefighter, an active duty firefighter, Air National Guard, and then guess what? I was also a volunteer, but 30 years total experience. Retired as a fire chief in one aspect, district chief in another. And then being military, guess what? There was deployments in on top of that. So you want to talk about being a firefighter, talk about being a firefighter in the desert away from your family for 6 months at a time. So that's my experience. I've been retired now for almost 5 years. Trust me, there is life after work. Retirement is definitely worth it. So make sure you get out alive. And yeah, that's me. So Julius?
I'm Julius. I spent a little over 18 years located out of the state of Georgia. I left for two reasons. One, it was time mentally for me. Just had some younger kids. And so I started a little bit later. So my story is a little bit different. But, with X amount of years left until the little ones grow up, had an opportunity presented to me. But some of the challenges on the holidays that I think, especially from the young kid standpoint, is changing, like when Santa Claus comes. Like Santa Claus knows mommy and daddy's a firefighter, so we're going to do Christmas 2 days before. And, the stress of that may not seem apparent right then and there, but again, then you're going off to work and now they go back to school and things like that. So I really think that it's not just on us, but it's everybody else in the family that shoulders, hey, we got to adjust because mommy and daddy don't do the same 9 to 5. We don't get Christmas off. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. And, just dealing with that and letting your loved ones be a part of that, but also, realizing, hey, if it is time to change, there is, like Todd said, life after the fire department, and getting out, not only alive physically, but alive mentally, I think is the biggest thing. Like, you can be alive, but you can be, tarnished. And that's what you got to, everybody knows when it's time, and hopefully that opportunity affords you guys the same as it was for others that have gotten out to get out alive, not only in a physical body, but in a mental state as well, to where you can go be a mom, a dad, a brother, a sister, a friend, or whatever role in life you play. So just a little bit about me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we talk about this a lot, right? We early in our careers, as you mentioned earlier in the call, Julius, it's about just surviving it. And the career that we got into years and years ago is not necessarily the career that is there today. And so when we teach often, we talk a lot about, we want you to thrive in this career, not survive this career, because ultimately our goal is to help people create longevity in their relationships and in their career. But it's to your guys' point, if it does come to that head where you've got to make a decision, as the three of us did, and Todd, you obviously got to the 30-year mark, but when you have to make that decision, it's super difficult. But if your identity is not found in that badge and in that uniform, it makes it a lot easier transition, because that uniform, that badge is not who you are, right? I look at you right now, Julius, you look happy, you look healthy, you look like you found a new sense of purpose. And it hasn't been that long ago, like you said, that you left. And so we can do this stuff. I think oftentimes we get trapped in our own minds thinking, I'm here and this is all I got. But let's talk about some tips and tricks, for the holiday season, for these responders. Like what worked for you guys during this time of year, or what didn't work that you can say to the responders that are maybe on here, or the families on here. Don't fall into this pitfall. Instead, maybe this is what I found throughout my career that worked. Is there anything specifically this time of the year that, whether it was a communication tactic or an outlet or getting your family away, what worked for you guys during this time?
I know we were really big. And again, my life is a little bit different. It took me a while to get to that dad with kids age. So I spent the majority of my fire service career as a single or newlywed. So I was the guy picking up extra, holidays, doing shift swaps for random days, things like that. But the 2 holidays that I did end up having to work, we did good as a crew, and we were a double company house where we would have time where the families would come in, right? And so bringing them to the fire station, I think, not only brings your families together, but it lets you see your kids and your wife and your family, but it also lets those other kids see, and other wives and husbands see, like, hey, I'm not alone. If you guys don't have a lot of crew outings, it gives you a chance to have spouses meet other spouses, and maybe they pick up something of, hey, this is how we deal with the holidays, but this is how we deal with birthdays. This is how we deal with baseball games. Maybe, especially if you're newer to it and you get, there's always that old salt firefighter. Maybe you got the old salt spouse on your crew where he or she, whether they're a husband or a wife, is like, hey, this is how I've done it, and I've survived like this for 20, and it works for us this way. So I think just exposing on that holiday to everybody else, and of course getting together and getting to see those people is important too. But they can learn tricks just like you can learn tricks on a fire scene. They can learn tricks from spouses that have been doing this a lot longer than possibly you have, if your spouse is newer to the career.
Man, I love that. I think including the families is something we talk about often, because it seems to have left our career a little bit. I'd say in the last 5-6 years, yeah, we became a little bit more corporate, chasing ISO ratings or different things that we're doing. We've kind of left the family aspect out of it, and so I love that. I mean, we just did a family night for the Adams County Sheriff's Office here, and it was the first one that they've ever done. And I'm thinking in my mind, it's amazing that they're there, but man, what have we missed out on keeping our families away? This isn't just, we're not the only firefighters here. Our family does this career with us. It is extremely impactful on them. And until we realize that, we're missing out on something special. So that's great, Julius. What about you, Todd?
Yeah, we did the same thing. Bringing the families out to the department and hanging out with the kids and doing all that stuff. But I want to kind of back up a little bit and talk about something you had talked about, Jordan, because it's a mistake I made early on. Is I honestly thought, firefighting is not what I do, it's who I am. And don't get me wrong, good, bad, ugly, it's the best job in the world. Loved every minute of it. But it took a while for me to figure out it's not who I am. It is the job that I did. And it did shape who I became. It's a big part of who I am, but it's not the only thing that I am. And it took a while after retirement to figure that out, because, you talk about it. One of the first things I remember when I first met you talk about is, those of us that spend a lot of time in the fire service or public safety in general, if we don't do something after we retire, that the statistic is we're dead in 5 years. Mm-hmm. Right. And I'd seen that happen with guys that I worked with that, they retire and within 5 years they're gone. And I didn't want to be that guy. And so that's why I do what I do now. It's a way to stay connected to the industry and the basically the family that brought me up. But it was hard for me to realize that it's, you know, it's what I did, not who I am. You know, there's a piece of it that's me, but
I always say in conjunction with that, that like I liked my time when I was at work, but I loved my off time, right? And you got to find a reason to love your off time, whether it's a hobby, whether it's family, whether it's doing whatever, but love and like your time at work because it's important and you have to be in that mindset, but really love your time off work because that's what you're going to do when, because eventually the job's going to say, hey, we can't use you anymore, or you're too broken physically to work here. It's not going to be forever. So you have to find outlets outside of life. If it's hunting, fishing, coaching sports, doing whatever it is, but love your time when you're not at the fire station, because I guarantee you it makes that separation at the end that much more seamless and that much more enjoyable, to give you things to look forward to having weekends to go fishing, hunting, play basketball, whatever it may be that you decide is your love outside of the fire station.
Yep. True statement.
I love that. And I think a practical way for those listening right now, or those that are going to hear this, the way that we like to think about it and teach it is, what is your purpose for being a firefighter? Because if you know your purpose and you're doing it for something bigger, if you're just going to the firehouse to be a firefighter, to say you're a firefighter, or for the off time, you don't really truly have a purpose. You're not doing it for anything bigger than yourself. Mm-hmm. But once you get outside of yourself and you've got that purpose, no matter what you're doing in life, you're going to be able to be fulfilled and satisfied, because that's what leaves guys, is they leave this and they're like, oh man, I don't have a purpose. Like, and that's what kills them in less than 5 years. So I love that point. And I just encourage people, figure out what your purpose is. And if you can't acknowledge what that is, do a deep dive, do some examination on what else is there, because life is bigger than that for sure.
Right.
And as Julius, as you hit on the head, I'll kind of go into a little bit of why we created what we did, is for that simple purpose. I think having healthy outlets, I watched a lot of my guys, I fell into this trap for years when I didn't have a good balance in my life. The fly fishing, the golfing, the healthy community outside of work, I stopped doing. I started isolating a little bit more. Like I said, I went from work to work. And so those healthy outlets and coping mechanisms that I once had, I stopped doing. And that's really what led to an unhealthy person. And we teach it, you're only as healthy on duty as you are off duty. Truly. I think there's this false narrative that we can be one way off shift and then we come to shift and we're a totally different person. That's not the case. This thing's too intertwined. And so what we do now is we provide 15 to 20 outings per month, completely free of charge, to responders and their family members, whether that be fly fishing, horseback riding, rock climbing, mountain biking, woodworking, metalworking, spouse outings, couple outings. And really, it's not centered around alcohol. It's centered around community, and it's centered around teaching people some of these healthy outlets so that they can do them when they're off shift. So I love that piece that you just said, because that's really what works to keep people in the right frame of mind when they're off shift. I don't know if you have anything.
I'd like to spin that too, kind of what we talked about when I first met you 15, 20 minutes ago. You said keeping yourself healthy off shift. You have to be, I think you can also look at it conversely, where you have to keep yourself healthy on shift to be healthy off shift, right? And this is kind of where we talked about, and something that I've realized, because guys, I've only been out since the end of June. So I'm like a baby in this outside of the fire station life. And one thing that was brought to my attention pretty short thereafter is, now that since I've left, I'm more patient, I'm better at this, or I'm more loving or showing. And so what I think I'm starting to dissect in my retirement is, when we go to shift, we pick on each other, which is great. That's a necessity. But the thing that we do, I think, also to each other is we lay a lot of stuff on us outside of the calls, outside of the stuff that we signed up to see. But, you know, we gripe and we complain about pay and training and lack of staffing. And guys, that's all legitimate gripes. But you got to think, when we sit around and we do it for 24 hours a day, it just doesn't fall off when you get home, right? It takes time to take those off. And so we have to do, or you guys have to do, a better job of taking care of each other on shift. And I'm not saying that, oh, everything's roses, because it's not. You'll meet this guy, and I'll tell you the first one, I'll pick out every weed in the bunch. But be cognizant of what you guys do outside of all the extra stressors. and be mindful that that stuff just doesn't fall off your shoulders. It stays with you, and it may make that fuse when you get home this short and you're popping off at things. And I think that's one thing that I've noticed, because, you know, there is a lot of problems in the fire service out of our control, right? Like, we can't do it. So we got to manage and take care of what we can do, change what we can change. But most importantly, love and take care of each other, not only on scene, but when you're off scene, hanging out at the station, where, depending on how busy your department is, that's a lot of the time that you spend. And be mindful of what you guys and the extra stressors that you guys are putting on each other, because it's there and it's real. And I'm telling you, it's real, because I've seen it and now I feel it, right? So that's the big thing. So taking care of each other on shift, so you're healthy off a shift, which is the reverse. And another way to look at what Jordan said as well.
Yeah, and I just want to echo that, because that's part of why I enjoy doing these, and why I really like getting to know Jordan. You know, again, 30 years in the fire service. When I came on the job, it was suck it up, rub some dirt on it, get up and walk it off. We're not talking about that type of stuff. And so it's good to see that that's a change in the fire service. That's good. Let's talk about it. Let's fix these problems. Let's make sure everybody's healthy mentally and physically. Because that's not how I grew up in fire service. And I was one of those guys. I didn't talk about stuff when I got home, because I was protecting my family. At least that's what I thought. And that's, you know, I'm on my third marriage. Part of that is because of that, you know. So none of it's because I'm a bad guy, obviously, but you know.
No, some of this is we got to train at the academy level. Like you said, you both have said this, and I've said it. This job will change you. It will impact you no matter what. Nobody gets out of this job unscathed, but the level of which it impacts you is how you handle it moving forward. What are the resources that you're utilizing? Are you communicating with your significant other before and after shifts, and letting them in a little bit? And those are some things that we often now try to teach at the academy level. And I think it's extremely beneficial, because that's the only way that you're going to keep people in this career and keep their families together, truly. Let's flip this back to the holidays a little bit. What were some of the, you know, obviously we talked about the schedule, missing holidays or missing quality time with our loved ones. But one of the things I know that had a even bigger impact on me during the holiday season was working in a little bit of a rougher area, and working with, I would say, underprivileged families that didn't have the bells and whistles for the holidays. Walking into a one-bedroom apartment to see 7 kids without a Christmas tree, all sleeping in one bedroom, knowing that their Christmas was going to look a lot different than my kids, and seeing the hurt families every day during that holiday season, what we call the holiday season, I think had a bigger impact on me when I went home, because I felt this, I don't know if the word guilt is right, but almost a guilt that, dang, I was running on this family last night that doesn't even have any gifts, and my kid's Christmas tree is full of gifts. That played a pretty big impact on me during the holiday season. And I'll share some ways to get out of that. But did you guys experience that at all? Was there anything that you can relate to there?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it comes with the job. You're going to see that. One of the ways that we tried to offset that, and it helped quite a bit, was we always tried to adopt a family at the holidays, and, you know, get to know that family a little bit, get to know the kids, and then try to provide those gifts that Christmas that they just couldn't because of the situation. But yeah, I know exactly what you mean by the guilt. Totally get that. So.
Yeah. And again, holidays or not, it's tough to see it. And it's that separation that you have to create, to say, you know, I got to do everything in my power, whether it's adopting a family or, you know, donating through your local community, time, money, you know, through the church, whatever your outlet is outside, you know, finding that way. And really, you know, is it helping someone else? Absolutely. But ultimately it helps you to repair whatever guilt or hurt you feel towards that family, because it happens all around us, right? Whether it's in America or in other countries. And so I always used it as the converse to make me work to provide my family the best opportunity, you know, So we never ended up in that situation, no matter what happened. And you never know what somebody's situation is. And I'm not here to down anybody for that, but it always strived me to say, I got to do this to make sure I get to this level so we're not there, right? So you can use it to repair and to help you through it, but you can also use it as a motivator. And that's what I always did, was to motivate my own self, to make sure my own provisions for my family were always top tier. And that's just, you know, if you need one more motivator to make sure your wife and kids are taken care of, or brothers, sisters, you know, nieces, nephews, whatever it is, that's what I always used it for, is just a motivator to not only help, but also to provide and make my home life top notch as best as I could have it.
For sure, man. Well, what both of you said in there without saying it was perspective. And I think shifting your perspective at times is so huge. And one of the ways that you can do that is just simple gratitude practice, right? Write 3 things down in the morning that you're grateful for, whatever it might be. Those are some things that really helped me. Back to your point, Todd, one thing that we used to do is we had a old antique fire truck that we would, you know, put Christmas lights on and then drive through the district and deliver gifts. Nowadays, they'll do like adopt a family, each person at the firehouse. We actually had a family this last month. Their father was a police officer for 31 years and died by suicide after he left, about 6 months after. Well, one thing he used to do in his community for 16 years was his family would stuff gift bags for their community, and then all of his officers would take them on duty and distribute them to those families. Well, they wanted to keep their tradition going, and so this husband and wife and some of their family stuffed 250 bags full of gifts, and they delivered them to 6 different police departments for them to put in their squad cars and deliver out to those kids. And so I say that to say, you know, if you're on here, you're a responder or a responder, your family member, and your loved one's having a difficult time, or you're having a difficult time, try to get outside of yourself a little bit once again and share that love and joy and gratitude with others, because it truly does, as Julius says, it impacts you more than you'll ever know. And it's a way to flip the script on the holiday season and truly enjoy it, and watch others be blessed by that too. So I just know personally that was one thing for me that it was always hard to see during these times. And to your point, we work for it, but it's still is difficult to see others hurting and in need, because I think we all get into this career with a passion to help people, and at times throughout our career that sympathy and empathy decreases and diminishes, and that wall gets hardened. So it's good to still have that feeling, and if you're feeling that, that's probably you're at a decent place still. If you're not feeling anything, probably a good way to check in.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know any other challenges that we're kind of missing that responders go through during this time of the year. I mean, I don't know what it's like in Georgia and, you know, Oklahoma, you know, out here in Colorado, this time of year means adverse weather. I think I told you guys we had a couple firefighters and police officers that were hit by a drunk driver on a highway call. That can be a challenge. It's not necessarily having to do with the holiday season, but it's the winter, and being out on the highways can be scary. I know our spouses, our loved ones. I'll just say this: acknowledge the fact that your spouse or significant other being at home during this time of year specifically is going to maybe have a little bit of anxiety, and that anxiety is going to come up the night before shift or while you're on shift, and try to put yourself in their shoes, because we've been working with some responders that don't understand why their significant other is worried about them. And it's like, hey, you got to stop and put yourself in their shoes. They're just worried. There's some fear that comes with our job. Even though 99% of the time we're coming home day in and day out. We've got to be a little bit more empathetic and understanding of what our families go through while we're there on these scenes. So
yeah, that's one that, now that standing at the top and looking down and reflecting on what I was horrible at, that was one thing. Cause it's like, I'm the one going, you don't need to worry. Like I'm always going to be here. Right. And I always, again, my defense for that was, well, you signed up for this with me. Cause by the time we started dating and we got married, I was already in this career. Right. So you knew what you were signing up for. And I was very was very hard shelled when it came to that, because, you know, you could have gotten out at any time, never mind the fact that you may have loved me or whatever, you know. And so maybe a new stressor for that is, if you weren't doing this before and now you finally gotten the opportunity and you have been married or dating for several years, it may even be more. So pay mind to that, because Jordan brings up a great point. Like, while we think we're invincible and bulletproof, and most of us take the precautions to be that way, they don't understand that, and they can't rationalize in their head probably why they chose a different career and they didn't become firefighters themselves. But they maybe need some extra hand holding on that, and not only year round, but especially around the holidays. And so be mindful of that, because I never was. And looking back and then hearing Jordan say it, it's like that trigger in my brain that I'm like, man, I remember walking out the door and being like, you signed up for this. Like, I'll be home tomorrow. I'll see you then. I love you. Goodbye. You know? And so just be mindful of it, because that not only around the holidays, but all the time. I know we're focused holiday centric now, but because they struggle with that, and they may not tell you, like, you don't come home and tell them everything. They may not feel comfortable saying, like, I worry about you all the time, because they don't want to pin that burden on you, where now you're worried about them worrying about you. And now you got other stuff that you're just, again, bouldering on your shoulders, where you're just worrying about more stuff. So be mindful of it, and let them know, hey, it's okay to worry. Here's the things I do. Maybe give them some examples of, here's what I do to make sure I come home. You know, and that's something I was horrible at. And so it's good to hear Jordan bring that up, because I was terrible at it, not just around Christmas or the holidays. I was terrible about it all year round. So
Yeah.
Great point.
Yeah, subject I want to kind of touch on too, in that same realm, but just from a different perspective, because we've kind of been looking at this from a career firefighter's position. But let's think about our brothers and sister volunteers out there who, you know, they do a job full time, and then they give up their free time from their family to help support their community. And, you know, they could be sitting down to Christmas dinner, and then the bells go off, and their family don't know when or if they're coming back. So it's a whole nother level of stress, and just, yeah, it's hard on career guys, but like we said, that's what we signed up for. It's just as hard, if not harder, on a volunteer who's giving what free time they have with their family to do the job that we all signed up for. And, you know, the job isn't any different. The job does not care if you're paid or volunteer at all. It's going to be the same fire. It's the same heat. You know, it's all the same. You just have to deal with it on top of a full-time job.
Yeah. Great point. Yeah, I'm sure there's some volunteers on here listening, and you know, that's the great part about PSTrax and the platform you guys provide, is it's nationwide. And you know, oftentimes we get stuck in our bubble of what we have and what our experience is, but it's great to hear that. What are some other, like, practical ways that maybe you guys have to suggest to these families during the holiday season to help them not just get through it, but really, like we said, thrive through it? I'll just start with one. I think prioritizing some time that maybe is outside of the set dates of the holidays, to do something fun with your family. I mean, truly, your kids don't care if it's Christmas morning or 3 days after. They really don't. They just want quality time with you, with us, together. And that's something that's been heavy on my heart, as the work that I'm doing at times impacts my time with them. And so prioritizing that, whether it's on the schedule or communicating that with them, is one thing I would suggest doing, that will help you and your family get through these holidays.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, what we've been talking about from the beginning, something that I didn't come up with, is communication, you know, talking about it, you know, and being very real about it, you know, and sometimes you're not going to like what you hear when you're, you know, telling somebody how you feel, because they may not get it. But the more you communicate, the better the conversation is going to be. And that's taken me a while to figure out. Yes.
And I can't believe I'm about to say this, but I'm gonna say it anyways. Like, it's okay to let your guard down, right? Like, I've always been a big guard up kind of guy. Like, you can lean on my shoulder, but don't cry on it. You know, you can have my shirt, but don't use it as a snot rag type of thing. But learn, and again, this is looking at it after the fact, like, it's okay to expose yourself, especially around the ones that you love, right? And whatever exposing yourself is, if that's opening up with, you know, communication, or, you know, breaking down, whatever it is, I promise you, those that are closest to you, won't view you any different way. They may actually say the new improved version or this version is a version that we actually like, because we can get through that shell and we can, we can share that communication or share that time, because setting aside that time and not being in the moment doesn't matter. You don't even need to schedule that time. Being and whatever you need to do, and mine would have been cracking the shell to get into that moment outside, because I think it's important to spend that time. And like Jordan said, kids don't care if it's Christmas morning or 2 days or 3 days after, but being there more than just in your physical being is what really they care about. They don't even got to do something, super expensive. It can be sledding if you got snow, or it can be whatever it is. It's just you being there. And there's a difference between you being there in the physical being. And again, like I said earlier, like being there in the mental being, because you have to be there in both. Because if you're not, they'll pick up on it and you won't even enjoy it as much. And it'll become a headache. Like, man, why are we even doing this? Right. And so if I could tell you, learn how to let that guard down. And again, I can't believe I'm the one saying this, but learn whatever way you have to do. And it may not be an overnight process. It may take you, but I guarantee you, when others see it, the best compliment you will get is they're like, man, whatever you're doing now, keep doing it, because it's way different. And you're more approachable, you're more patient, you're more loving, you're more whatever. And that's what I would give you. Find a way, and don't be like me and don't find it 6 months after you leave. Find it sooner than later and practice. You may swing and miss the first time, or it may take you 6 months, but if you work on it as hard as you work on, training in gear or doing workouts or live fire, if you put as much in your training in your outside life as you do to your fire department life, you're bound to have success. And it's going to take as much or more work on your outside days as it does on your inside days, because we're always a work in progress.
I love it, man. And one thing that I've found, and we say this often, is vulnerability creates depth in relationships. And I think just giving a little bit of vulnerability and transparency to those in your circle will create depth in conversations that you've never had before. And it will help you understand why people are the way that they are and why we respond the way that we do oftentimes. And in that communication piece, as you said, communicate to your kids why you're going to be gone, right? I think that's one thing that my kids were too young probably even understand it at the time, but sharing them, hey, daddy's gone over Christmas because this is what I'm out doing. And not obviously wearing the hero flag, but you share to them what you're doing. And man, that creates a level of trust with them. And also that they're going to respect that. And they're going to look up and be like, yeah, my dad's not here, my mom's not here, because they're out, helping others. And that attitude of service is huge. So I love that. And with that, you never know. And I've found this out now over and over the last 3 years, because I'm a nobody, but my story has inspired and hopefully transformed others. And that's every single one of us, whether you're on this call as an attendee or here on the panel, everybody has a story, and it will relate and resonate with somebody in your life. You just got to be able to share it. You got to be willing to share it. And you don't have to share the deep depths, but you can share the overview of it. And you never know what that's going to mean to somebody else, especially during the holidays. That can mean everything to them. And relationships is what we want and what we need this time of year and all the time. But you can't have that without sharing a little bit of depth and getting below the surface. So I think that's such a great point, and something that we try to encourage folks to do, because there's oftentimes in our career, in our field, whether you're a spouse or the responder, you think you're alone. You think your thoughts, your feelings, what you're dealing with it's just me. Reality of it is 98% of us are in the same boat. And if we just share that, God, that perspective shifts can save lives in and of itself. So yeah, I love that. And I think that's huge.
Another thing I want to point out, and it's because it's a different part of my life, but also be alert and aware of the guys, if you're not on duty, that maybe moved in from out of state or don't have family, don't have a significant other. Make sure they got somewhere to go on a holiday too. And I'm sure y'all do a great job of that. So that's just a friendly reminder, a PSA to say, hey, if you got the brand new guy and he moved from New York and you're in Florida because his goal was to become a firefighter and this is the spot he got hired in or she got hired in, make sure you check in and say, hey, you got a place to go? If not, there's a seat at our table. You come, you chase my kids around. Most of the time, they're going to be able to help you because they're going to have more energy than you as an old person. And they may be able to run those kids to bed early at 7:30. So just another way to take care of each other. We talked about the family side of it. There might be people on your crew, and you probably know them. And like I said, you're probably already doing a good job, but just a friendly reminder, make sure everybody's got a place to go on the holidays if they don't have family, or if they don't have their own immediate family, wife, kids right now as well, or somebody that's just recently lost their family through a divorce, because that's, you know, a popular thing that happens in public safety. Make sure that those guys and girls, maybe if they don't have the kids on Christmas, maybe they're going to come over, or hey, I'll meet you out when my kids go to bed or something. Just give them some kind of personal connection, because spending a holiday alone is almost as bad as spending it with a crazy house full of family and kids and running and screaming.
Yeah, good point, Julius. And I want to touch on too, you know, if you are struggling, if you're that guy and you're struggling, ask for help, you know, just like Jordan said, you know, talk about your story, but ask for help. And it doesn't have to be somebody at the station, you know, but you got to talk to somebody. You got to ask for help. So, you know, that's important. And that's the first step. That's the hardest step usually. It's usually the hardest step.
Yeah, and I think oftentimes, I mean, it's a great segue. I think both of you segued perfect into the next piece was, you know, Julius, like looking out for others on your crew, being inquisitive. And this is where, you know, depending on where you work and where you live, I think at times we call this a brotherhood or a sisterhood, but yet the guy sitting across from me doesn't even know my kids' names, and we work together for 48 hours. So be that person that is inquisitive, because when you understand your crew and you understand the people around you and you know their past experiences, you may know, hey, you know, Todd lost his mom last year around this time. Might be a good time to check in with him. But if I don't ever have that conversation with Todd, I may not know to ever check in with him on that. And those are things that we can really, just little things that we can do to keep tabs on each other. And then, you know, as you were mentioning, Todd, the resources and asking for help, you know, practically what that looks like. And one thing that we found and why our platform, I believe, works is people come on our outings and they're with others in like-minded capacities, right? People that understand our job and work in our field, and they're having fun together. And that guard that you put up, Julius, that I put up, that we all put up, it gets let down, and that defense mechanism drops. And then we encourage them to be inquisitive, and that opens up that relationship component. And now you found somebody that you trust, and it's like, hey man, my marriage is a mess, bro. Like, I don't know what to do. And Todd, you can be like, hey, I've been there before. Here's what I learned, and here's what helped me. Here's a resource that we got right down the road. And you'll be like, I didn't even know it was there. Well, you're never going to know until you have that conversation. And granted, I don't know what resources are in your guys' areas. I think that's probably a part of how we want to maybe end this webinar today, is identifying what resources people have access to, which I'll share what we have on our side of the coin. But I think practically asking for help, that's the hardest thing. That, you know, when responders and military veterans across the country are polled and asked what's the most difficult thing you've ever had to do in your life, the number one thing most difficult was asking for help, because we expect those people that are in the red, so to speak, in that crisis area, to ask for help when they actually have the least amount of capacity to ask for help. And so that's where we have to do a better job collectively of keeping tabs on our brothers and sisters and the family members. And I know we feel like we don't want to be judgy and we don't want to over insert ourselves. And there's a way to do it appropriately, and it's relational. You know, if you don't have a relationship with somebody and you start sticking your nose in, yeah, they're going to shut you out. But if you put the work in, I think that's where it really comes full circle. So I don't know if you guys have experience with that or agree. That's just one thing I've seen with where we sit now.
No, definitely. You're right. You got to find the resources. You got to pay attention to what's going on around you. Keep an eye on your brothers and your sisters. One of the things that we've always talked about, and it's a great source, it's not the only source, is just the church. Whatever religion you belong to, there's always somebody there that's going to be willing to listen to you and talk with you. So that's a great resource, not the only one. And then there's organizations out there. I mean, there's state organizations. A lot of times, if you don't know, reach out to the state organization, say, hey, I got a problem. I need to talk to somebody. They may know who you need to talk to, so there's lots of resources out there. You just gotta look for them, and you gotta help your brothers out there. Google's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think Todd touched on it earlier. Like, it's never been so accepted at the fire station level to admit and own when you, hey, dude, I'm not okay, right? So nowadays, podcasts, Google, there's so many, and I guarantee you, at the end of all of these podcasts and things like that, they give, hey, here's my contact information, because if you don't know who else to call, you can call me, and it doesn't matter what time of day. And there's so many people out front and advocates for it now that, you don't have to look even really hard. Like the Google search might take less than 30 seconds to at least get a starting point. And even if it's across the country, I guarantee you that person's going to know someone in your immediate area, even if you don't. So I think just, and in that way, sometimes it's even, if you're like, hey, I don't want to show that weakness, if you're not over that part yet, you can do it behind closed doors, and you can talk to people if you don't feel comfortable yet bringing it up in front of the people that maybe go to battle with on every third day basis. So there's ways you can do it out front. There's ways you can kind of do it behind the scenes. And so with minimal effort, I think you can find ways, groups like Jordan's or First Rung, or all of them that are out there now, right? Like, they're there. You just got to do an ounce of looking, and then they'll connect you to wherever region or whatever specific. They may have specific groups for specific issues, right? And just look, and it's there. I feel like that's now more than ever. It's like that. Maybe not like it was 20 years ago, where it's a little bit more in the weeds. I think it's pretty much out front and center, and I think that's one of the greatest innovations we've made in the last couple decades is being okay and having people that are willing and able to help you through some rough times.
Yeah. Yep. And if you're a leader, this is something that started in my department, before I left, but was great. But if you're a leader and you don't have some sort of a member assistance program, start one. You've got people in your department, your agency, that want to help others in the agency, not just the community, but in the agency. So you got people that are willing to do that. Get them training, form a members assistance program. That way there is a place where they can go directly to get resources and get help.
Yeah, on that note, I mean, whether you're a spouse or a responder on here, I mean, spouses, you can create a Facebook group for your department. You can create a support group for your agency. As Todd said, create a wellness coordinator position, or delegate, if you're small, delegate that wellness piece to somebody, because as Julius pointed out, there are numerous amounts of resources out there. Now, are all of them culturally competent? Are all of them readily accessible? What we found is not, but there are plenty enough that are. You just got to know how to access them, and you got to be able to understand how to access them early, because when it gets to the point of crisis and now you're searching, that gets really tough. But if you have somebody that you can reach out to and know, that's huge. I know for us, you guys, anybody on this call, whether you're in Colorado or not, you can contact us. You can go to our website, revitalcolorado.org. We have a resources tab. Just some examples of resources that are out there for responders that you may not know of. There's financial assistance. There's critical gap funding. There are spiritual guidance counselors. There's Celebrate Recovery, divorce care, grief share. We have multiple modalities of therapy. Neurofeedback, EMDR, ketamine therapy is becoming popular out here. Just looking into some of those things. There's obviously your traditional talk therapy, nutrition and weight loss, fitness. You'd be amazed. I mean, I think for years we put mental health into a box. I said this last year. We put it into a box, but really our mental health is comprised of our physical health, our financial health, our occupational health, our emotional health, and our social health, right? So and our spiritual health. So all those things play into what our mental health looks like. If you're tapped out on any one of those levels, it's gonna play a part in it. So we've tried to develop partnerships, and some of them are across the country, with organizations that support responders specifically in all of these different areas. So check out that on our website. You can download our app in the App Store. It's completely free. We do retreats where we fly responders in. Actually, Todd, we had Oklahoma City Police Department's wellness unit fly out this year for a retreat, 3 days in the mountains. A full-time chef that cooked over open flame. We did horseback riding, shooting, some psychoeducation built on couples skills and communication. It was great. So we can hopefully bring responders in from out of state. And then we had a wellness conference where we had about 300 responders from 10 different states represented. And in that conference, we're helping strategically with these different states. Hey, how do you get this here? Or if there's a resource that you're like, man, this would be beneficial, we will help get you in touch with the right person to start some of that stuff. So you can always reach out to us, and like they both said, do your research, because they're out there for sure.
Yep. And just like Julius says, I'm sure you can find us on the website, go to the PSTrax website. But if you need somebody to talk to, you're not looking to buy software, but you need somebody to talk to, feel free, reach out. I'm here. I'll be glad to talk to anybody anytime.
Absolutely. Julius, what do you got? You got anything else to close it up with? I don't know if Liz wants to jump back on here, talk about anything from a spouse standpoint, but
Yeah, for anybody that doesn't know, I'm a spouse, so I support on the other end. You guys covered everything really well. Thank you for your time this morning, everybody. I think that the only thing I would add is something that my husband's department did that was really cool. They did a spouse training, what to look for, what to see. I have a magnet on my refrigerator from that talks about, if my husband comes home and he's acting differently, or here are some behaviors to watch out for, reach out and ask him if he's okay. Or if you're not at that point, call the chief and say, hey, chief, something's up. I don't know what it is. Help me out here. And so they've all made a commitment to us spouses to help back us up if we're seeing something out of character, or, extra agitation or whatever it is. Because, my husband said something to me one time. He came home from a really tough call, and he's a volunteer. So he gets to come straight home and try to pretend like nothing ever happened. And, he had a look about him, and I said, what's up? And he said, I never want to go on that call again. That was something that I never thought I'd ever see. I saw it in a video during training about 20 years ago. Saw it live today, and I don't want to deal with it. And I said, do you want to talk about it? And he said, I'm not giving you that vision in your head. I do not want to talk to you about it. And he walked off. And I was like, first time in our marriage, my husband hasn't wanted to talk to me about something. I didn't know how to handle that. I'm like, yay. But I respected his side of it, and he didn't want to bring me that vision, that whatever it was. And as it turned out, it was a really bad accident where some kids were hurt. And that's all I know about it. I don't know details on that, but he wasn't interested in talking to me. And it was hard for me to realize that. But then at the same time, I was able to reach out to chief and say, I don't know what you guys saw. I don't know what happened. But, whatever protocols you need to do right now, we need to get something going on, because that messed my husband up, and he doesn't get shook very easily. So, so I would say, for those on the call that aren't spouse support, it's not a bad idea to provide some sort of education or resources. So, and on that topic, we did record this session. So when I do send the recording out to everybody, which I will do as soon as it uploads to YouTube, I include lots of resources. Revital, your website gets put out on there so that you can access that resource section that Jordan talked about. Because I did do some Googling around, and it's not easy to find the right place it's just, unfortunately, there isn't like one repository. So we will get you as much of the simplified information as we can too. So again, feel free to share it as loud and from the rooftops as you can. So that's all I have.
Awesome. No, thank you for providing this platform and for including us again. And Julius, it's great to meet you and great to know you. And Todd, as always, is fun.
Yep. Thanks again, Jordan. Thanks, Liz. And Julius, you're still ugly.
Ditto.
Ouch. All
Merry
right.
Christmas.
We'll sign off. Jordan, we'll see you later this week. I think we're gonna all see you in Denver, but everybody else, we'll get in touch and get those resources out, and let's do this again.
Sounds good. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas. Happy holidays, everybody.
Buddy.